Well, welcome to this week's edition of Tune to the Moon's Astrology for Your Week. My name is Jana Roemer, and we have Nadia Diamante as well. This week is, I think this week is not as intense as some of the weeks that we've had like leading up to this week, but there's still a lot of good stuff. And Nadia, do you want to start with the Lilith retrograde stuff? Because I feel like that's the juiciest. I think that's the stuff people will care about the most.
Yeah, sure. Let's start with that. I was just like spitting out my gum. I'm addicted to cinnamon gum. I put like 5 pieces in my mouth at once. Okay, so what we're gonna do, it's Chiron in Aries is retrograding, and then we have Lilith moving into Gemini. So we're gonna talk about both of those. A little tidbit of Lilith, because I am doing a Lilith workshop on pop-up workshop on Sunday. So you're gonna get even more of Lilith there. But I'm gonna start with Chiron since that's coming first. Chiron is retrograding in Aries on the 15th until December, and I can't remember the exact date right now. But Chiron retrogrades every year for about 4 to 5 months, right? For whatever that period of time is. So we already experienced this last year when Chiron was in Aries, and that had started on July 11th until, the end of the year-ish. So we understand what this Chiron in Aries retrograde feeling is like. And just to give you a little bit of background on Chiron, for those of you that don't know about him, Chiron's father was actually Saturn, or in Greek, they call him Kronos. Kronos was a Titan. So we have the Olympians, and before the Olympians were the Titans, and before the Titans were like these primordial gods. But Chiron's father is Saturn. And the reason why Chiron was a centaur was not that he was born a centaur like a typical centaur, was that Saturn, as all the Greek gods and goddesses do, is cheating on his wife. His wife caught with a nymph. His wife caught him, so he turned into a stallion to escape and run away. And then that's why Chiron was born a centaur. And he doesn't have like the typical centaur body or that like wild, crazy mind of the centaur. He was abandoned in most stories, and then he was adopted by Apollo. And Apollo is the god of the sun. And Apollo is this god that is like very open-minded and is all about art and culture and beauty, and love is love. That's very expansive. And so Chiron grew up being surrounded by art and music, and he was trained in that, and he was trained in medicine and in prophecy and fortune telling and astrology and hunting. And so Chiron was this god who had all of the qualities of like the lower vibration qualities of Saturn, because of Saturn being his father and turning into a stallion. And then he had like the highest vibrational qualities that any sort of creature, any sort of being could ever have. And so he is this perfect blend, and we see that in the Chiron archetype itself, in the actual like symbology of Chiron. So the reason why we call Chiron the wounded healer was because Chiron was a teacher who trained all of the heroes, including Heracles, which is Hercules. And Chiron was accidentally poisoned by an arrow that he had dipped in the poison of the Hydra. He was accidentally poisoned by this like clumsy, goofy Heracles. And the Chiron was immortal, so he could never die. And but he still had the agony, this pain of this wound for the rest of his life. He couldn't take it any longer, so he went to Zeus, or Jupiter, and said, release Prometheus. Prometheus was the god who gave human beings fire, and who we think of now as like the modern Uranus. He said, release Prometheus from the eagles eating out his organs, and I will give up my immortality, which is, Chiron is the only god that we've found that has given up his immortality ever. So Zeus agreed, Prometheus was freed, and then Chiron was put into the stars as Sagittarius. And so I bring that also up because Chiron is often equated to Virgo. Jana and I have had some discussions on like why this may be. I think it's Barbara Hanclow, right, who was like just decided. But really, when you're looking at the Sagittarius constellation, that is actually Chiron. So that gives you some more insight into Chiron's energy, right? We know a lot about Sagittarius, maybe not as much about Chiron. But if you apply all like the wisdom seeking and the guruship and the in the high intellect of Sagittarius energy to Chiron, it's pretty much that's what he is. You know, he's that teacher who guides you. So when we have Chiron in Aries, this shows a wound that is speaking to where we feel weak in ourselves. The core wound of Chiron in Aries is the wound of the self, the wound of the identity. Who are we? Why are we here? How do we just feel strong as ourselves? And then, so people who have Chiron and Aries in their chart may sort of have weak identities, not being able to really say like, this is who I am, and always feeling like they're at battle trying to prove who they are. If you have Chiron and Aries in your chart, which none of you do, because you would be 50 and none of you are that age, you would be going through this internal battle right now, like, who am I in the world? And if you have been you know, until your 50s, right, picking up all the tools of like helping yourself and healing yourself, then by the time you hit your Chiron and Aries return, then you're going to feel like you know what you need to do in order to move on to that second Chiron cycle of your life. It's like our lives are broken up into 2 Chiron cycles essentially. And then we get to heal. We're picking up the tools and the resources. We're doing all of the learning of Chiron, and when we hit our Chiron return. So this Chiron in Aries in everyone is going to make you feel as if, what are your preferred, with positive intention, what are your preferred weapons? You know, like what weapons are in your arsenal that you have chosen to make yourself feel strong, to make yourself feel capable, to make yourself feel important, to create independence and autonomy for yourself. And when Chiron retrogrades, this is when we actually get to spend time to heal the wound. It's like when Chiron is direct, the wound is you just stick a bandage on it, you apply pressure, and then you keep going, right? You don't have time to slow down to see what's happening with the wound. As long as, you know, you're not bleeding profusely, which actually Chiron and Aries would bleed profusely all over the world and not just keep going, just keep moving. When it's retrograde like this, we take off the bandage and we're like, oh, holy shit, like that's infected. Like, we need to take care of that. We need to heal by being still, by strategizing like how to heal ourselves, strategizing what our steps are when Chiron turns direct, when we know that the pressure of life is going to be put upon us. When Chiron in Aries is retrograde, this is a time of releasing, like not being in conflict all the time, like not feeling like we have to be combative or in conflict. And Chiron's name is Kyr, is a Greek for hand. So I like this with the Chiron and Aries because how do we wield our weapons, right? With our hands, most of us, right? Chiron's weapon is, in this scenario, a bow and the arrow. And we always think of that bow and the arrow of when you have a bow and arrow, it's not like a sword. You don't just have it and you're like not slicing away. When you shoot your arrow, your aim has to be very precise. It has to be true. So when we're working with this specific weapon, we have to really sit in this retrograde period and strategize and like figure out like which direction are we? Where is our arrow gonna go? because a lot of us in the healing world, we tend to go in all different directions, picking up different pieces. And, you know, Jana said, so, which I stuck in my mind is very true. Like sometimes it takes like 7 teachers to tell you the same thing before you listen to one of them. I'm the kind of person that probably takes like 33, and I'm sure a lot of us are like that too, because we're seekers, right? We're very curious. This is a time where we have to just trust the inner teacher. You know, we trust the inner teacher within us because it's Aries. That's about like who you are. You have to trust your own self and your own identity. So that's Chiron in Aries retrograde, which I think is going to be a great relief to a lot of us in many ways. If you've just been feeling like you don't even know where to start when it comes to like your life purpose, this is where you start. You slow down, you turn inward. Lilith and Gemini.
Can I say something before you
Yeah,
move
go
on?
ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to go back to what you were saying about Sagittarius or Virgo, because I think it's really relevant to what you're saying, why some people say Virgo. Yes, I think that's true that Barbara Handcloud did that, but I think that what they're looking at is the part of Virgo that is the healer. You know, part of what the Virgo archetype desires is perfection, but that perfection is this inborn part of their nature that they see what's wrong and they want to fix it and they want it to bring it to wholeness. They want to heal. And I think, like, given that story that Nadia just shared, you can see how Chiron can fit in there. And one of the things that I've been contemplating is maybe Chiron was more aligned with Virgo, and then when he became mortal and got placed in the Sagittarius, that it kind of shifted, and so there's a dual rulership there. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there because I think that I think there is relevance to both. So yeah. And then Nadia also made some really fun stuff for Instagram. It's like she called it like a Bad Libs. So watch for that coming on our Instagram account where you can kind of fill in the blank depending on what's happening in your chart. That'll be coming out on, probably posted on Thursday. So yes. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
That's for Lilith. And it's interesting you bring up Virgo. Yeah, but it's interesting you bring up Virgo because there's something that's actually got posted to the IG like an hour ago about Virgo itself. Like I always have conversations with Virgos about how the Virgo archetype is completely wrong. And if you look back on the actual like back to the ancient Assyrian, Babylonian, Sumerian, where the Virgo, the maiden, came from itself. We say Virgo like as in the virgin, but that's like very patriarchal astrology. Whereas it came from a Sumerian goddess, I believe her name is Nisaba, and she's the goddess of fertility and language. And she's a harvest goddess. So the maiden that we see is like not sterile, it's actually very fertile. And the reason why she's the goddess of language is because when this is how language was developed, when people were like taking in the harvest, right? Like, and writing down how many blueberry trees they got and like how many blueberries came from the blueberry tree, right? And so with Virgo, you have to be, in order to survive the winter, you have to be very meticulous with your harvest. And so, I don't know I'm saying that all of these archetypes that we're looking at need like further exploration. Chiron, Virgo, every archetype. This is why I like the mythology of it, because it gives it more depth and it takes away that like pop culture translation of what is actually going on. It's like we're really connecting to the ancient and like the actual
like the origin story.
Yeah, the origin story of it versus like Virgo the virgin, who's like cold and sterile and organized, and all they care about is like eating spinach and making lists. You know, the list part is probably the truest part of it because of the origin story, but everything else is like, if you've ever met a Virgo, is absolutely wrong. Virgo is very fertile and very creative and very even sexual in a way, because that's where the energy comes from. So anyways, going into sex, speaking of sexual, going into Lilith. So Lilith is moving into Gemini on the July 18th. And one thing I want to clear up with Lilith is there's like different Liliths when you look at a chart, but we're talking about Black Moon Lilith. And Black Moon Lilith is not an asteroid, which I'm gonna like make a confession. In the past, I've gotten that wrong. I've called Black Moon Lilith an asteroid because there's so many Liliths. But Lilith is a geometric point in the sky, like a mathematical point in the sky. And that point, that Lilith point, is that it marks the furthest point of the moon's orbit around the Earth. So if you think about how the moon illuminates the Earth when we don't have the sun, right? When the moon is at this furthest point, we're getting at the least amount of light from the moon. So we're in the shadow. And I always call Lilith the shadow singer, the shadow walker, the one that's leading you into the shadow. And this is why a lot of people are scared of Lilith. Like they think that she's bad, but she's actually not bad. And I'm not going to get into the mythology of Lilith in this class because of where we're going on the workshop. But Lilith essentially is that part of yourself that needs to be expressed, that has been repressed and needs to be expressed. So you can think of it as expression versus repression. And the more repressed that Lilith becomes, the more violent she becomes. And I say violent in violent. She's violent. She comes out. I always say this term, which I don't know where it came from, by hook or by crook. I just like the way it sounds. Like she just does what she has to do in order to express that part of herself. She's, like I said, not good or bad. She's all of us. And she's saying, if you deny your shadow self, you will suffer. Not that she makes you suffer. She's a mathematical point in the sky. She can't make you suffer, but she says that you will suffer yourself if you're not holding those two parts of yourself. And that's very Gemini, right? Those different parts. And so Lilith is often seen as, we talked about the primordial gods and goddesses before. Lilith is the epitome of a primordial god or goddess. She is the original. She's the original divine feminine energy. She's equatable to Inanna or Ishtar, Astarte, goddesses that were like the original of the very first, right? So she's primordial, and that's where we get the sexuality from, is because she is like generative energy, but she's also destructive. She's the light and the dark. I'm sorry if those kids are really loud out there. It's summer vacation, but that doesn't make a difference because they're like that anyways. But if you know tarot at all, you see the High Priestess card, and you see like the dark pillar and the light pillar. And so we kind of can think of, if Lilith is in her highest form, she's this High Priestess balancing between, bringing mystical alignment between the dark and the light, especially in Gemini. And I also like to think of it as like light matter and dark matter, right? The universe is made up of mostly dark matter, probably 95% of the universe. And that's what holds the universe together. So we have Lilith in there holding everything together, giving us a vessel, right? So Lilith in Gemini is going to help us understand the necessity of both expression and repression. It's necessary to be able to do both, because both can be used for a tool or for good or quote unquote bad. Because sometimes you can express things that you really shouldn't. You should have maybe repressed it. And sometimes you can repress things that you really shouldn't. You should have maybe expressed it. So this is very good for like if you're doing pairs of opposites, and to do a Lilith, maybe I'll do a Lilith yoga nidra with pairs of opposites. But Lilith in Gemini also means that the expression part of this really wants to work, wants to be activated the most. Because Gemini, what does Gemini like to do? Gemini likes to express. Gemini has very little filter, not because they're trying to be hurtful or harmful, but because they're trying to ask questions and figure stuff out. Lilith in Gemini, your words might come out harsher, more challenging, more combative. You might feel mentally like your brain is torn into, like you need to understand how to integrate the different parts of yourself. Lilith will take you into like, Lilith in Gemini is mischievous, is a trickster. So this is a time to watch out for how your shadow might be playing you, or how you might be playing yourself if you're caught up in your own mind. And if any of you have strong Gemini aspects in your chart, which I don't think most of you do, we do that in Gemini. We do that naturally. We play ourselves. It's like there's like there's a conductor in the background being like, go do this, this, and this, and you're like, okay, and like you just follow, and then you are like, holy, why did I do that? Because there's somebody else in there being like telling you what to do. And with Lilith, she's really telling you what to do. Lilith in Gemini is, the mind can be a trap if you let it. You don't need external energy to trap you. The mind can be the most liberating tool if you let it. You don't need external energy to free you. And then Lilith in Gemini is curious to explore the many different facets of that sexual energy that she's known for. I wrote here, she's a playful monster. So there might be a little bit of a playful monster inside of you that wants to come out. We can use Lilith in a way, let's just be honest, Lilith is using us. So we should use her too, to do that shadow work and to understand how to express these things that we need in a way that integrates our parts. So I saw a meme, maybe was it yesterday, something about like, don't let someone else's emotional ups and downs become addictive because you're looking for that rush. And I thought that was really interesting because I think we all do that to each other. You know, we bring people into the drama of our stories. That's very Lilith and Gemini. And we need to be extra cognizant of how we do that in the next 9 months or so. Because if we're in Chiron and Aries and we're trying to figure out our identity and who we are, if someone else is puppet mastering us, right, we can be like, I'm in control of my mind here. I'm in control of my mind and I get to control what the narrative, what the story is. I don't necessarily, the rush is interesting, but I don't necessarily need to be going for that all the time. So that's my take on Chiron and Lilith. You have anything to say about Lilith?
No, you're the Lilith queen. My Lilith is in the 12th house, so I'm still really just getting to know Lilith. She's a bit of a mystery to me. All I know is that when the things that are repressed finally do come, I have a part of me come forward that we don't typically see. So the other things that are going on in the astro this week, though, we really only have 3 big ones. We have Venus and Mars conjunct in Leo. And I actually really like this conjunction because there's a reset. Every time there's a conjunction, it's a reset. And so if we look at the qualities of Venus and the qualities of Mars, they get to have a reset. And, you know, they're in Leo. So this reset might be a little bit dramatic. And knowing that there's some drama in the field of your sacred masculine, sacred feminine, or maybe that's not even quite the right way. We could talk about it from your pleasure, your joy, abundance, your relations, the way that you have harmony between your relationships, and the part of you that wants to penetrate your life and fight for what you believe in, or maybe even get a little sloppy and be aggressive versus assertive. These two come together for a reset in Leo. Leo, of course, making, like I said, everything a little bit more dramatic, a little bit bigger, a little bit faster because it's fire. And of course, even though Mars isn't technically at home in Leo, Mars is loud in Leo because they're both fire. You know, Mars is a fiery planet and Leo is a fire sign. It's fixed fire. And personally, I am in a marriage, and so I am choosing to work with this one as an opportunity to reignite that fire in our marriage, and to like let the drama play be conscious, right? Like, can I be a little bit over playful with my partner? Can we come together and kind of revive a bit of a spark there? And I think if somebody's single, you could look at it from the perspective of maybe calling in a partner could potentially be there. Like you want to reset how these two planets are playing in your chart. And so you could look at it from that perspective. And um, I always go back to when I was single and the things that were coming up. Like, if we want something, we have to be it, right? Like, so if I want a partner who is on path and living purposefully, it will be more likely that I attract a partner that's on path and living purposefully if I am that myself. And so maybe the relationship isn't there, but you can embody the qualities that you're desiring in the relationship. Might be a fun way to play with that. If you want to work with it outside of the realm of relationship, you can work with it in the realm of purpose and prosperity. And I know that there's sometimes this idea that our prosperity isn't linked with the sorry, I thought the blueberry guy just got here. Of course he would get here right now. We would sometimes people think like the things that we love the most isn't what we get paid for. You don't want to make the thing that you love the most become the way that you're dependent on your financial well-being. But I actually think that story is bullshit. Like, I didn't start hating yoga when I started teaching yoga. I didn't start hating astrology or resenting the fact that I had to do it for my livelihood. I forgot about the money side and I let it be purely for the pleasure side, and then the money followed. And I think that's a little bit of a philosophy that we could take with this Mars Venus conjunction, this reset, is like, do it because you love it. Do it because it brings you alive. Do it because it brings you pleasure. Do it because it brings you joy. And like, use the Mars energy to like really do it. Like, dive in, make it happen. And then trust that the money will follow, instead of letting it be like, oh, if I don't make money off of this right now, I got to throw in the hat. Like, trust that it will, and live for your pleasure, live for your joy, live for the fun of it. So that's that one. And especially because it's Leo, like, you can be a little bit more obnoxious with it for this moment in time. You can be like, no, I really am. I'm an astrologer, or whatever it is. And then Thursday we have Thursday and Saturday we have two sun aspects. So Thursday we have Sun trine Neptune, and then Saturday we have Sun opposite Pluto. And I like these two together. They're actually very different energies. Sun trine Neptune is about the like connecting into your own artistry for what you're doing. Like, can it be more artful? Can it be more poetic, more musical? I when when the Sun and Neptune are together, I like to tap into music as a way to insight, or like music, art, or poetry as a way into your insights, as the way into recognizing the play of your own ego in your life. And then, of course, because it's favorable energy, and I always love to talk about Neptune as being a pathway into your psychic nature, you could also play with that and recognize that on Thursday, and I would actually say Wednesday, Thursday, because it's while we're sleeping. Oh, that actually reminds me, it's also the dream world. And so maybe this week you want to write down your dreams. And isn't that amazing that Sasha's dream course on Thursday is when they're gathering again, when it's the Sun trine Neptune? That wasn't planned, that just happened. So that's cool. And then on Saturday, when the Sun is opposite Pluto, like I said, it's kind of opposite. This one, I could see this being the illumination of where you're burning yourself out, where you've been going too hard, where the intensity is too intense, where you need to turn it down just a little bit and come back to yourself. Sometimes, to bring it full circle, when we give it our all in our passion and our purpose, and we give it our all in our relationships, or we give our all, and it is pleasure driven, we don't realize that pleasure driven or that joy driven action can also lead to burnout, even though it is something that you love. And so when we have the Sun opposite Pluto, only happens once a year. It happens every year, and it always happens in like Pluto's in Capricorn, so I think Pluto's in Capricorn for something like 12 years. It's been in Capricorn and Cancer for all this time, and I think we have one more, depending on the retrograde. I have to double check that. One more year with it on the Cancer Capricorn polarity, which to me, again, that burnout theme really comes in because the sun is saying, but wait, are you taking care of yourself? What do you need? Are you tending to your needs? Are you remembering that you need to fill your own cup up before you fill up other people's cups? And then we would be weird if I didn't talk about what you're obsessing about when it is Pluto, because sometimes it's the very thing that we're obsessing about that becomes the entry point to the burnout. Like if I'm, as a mom, I'm just going to talk about myself as a mom and also because the sun is in Cancer. If I'm obsessed with keeping the house clean all the time, that could make me go nuts because the house can't always be clean all the time. There's going to be times where, companies here or school's busy or summer holidays is on and the kids are home way more often than usual or whatever it is, that it gets a little bit messy. And if I obsess about it, then it's unnecessary roughness for my mental health. And if I can let things be a little bit easier and go with the flow a little bit, then I can understand, sure, it's messy today, but I can clean it up after the kids are in bed and just let it be. Or maybe the weekend's just gonna be messy but that's just an example of something you're obsessing about. Other people could be obsessing, like one of the things that I think is a shared obsession, maybe not with everybody, but with a lot of people that we're kind of at the end of wanting to even think about it, is the whole COVID and the pandemic and obsessing with like needing to know, or what is it, or what's happening, who's telling truth and who's not telling truth, and just actually recognizing, like, is that actually healthy? I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine who always is going really, really deep in it, and we were like, it's not actually healthy to care. If she was a doomsdayer, and if it is the end of the world, then why obsess about it being the end of the world? Why not just enjoy it to your fullest? Because I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's the end of the world as we know it, but we're growing into something fresh and new. And the way that we build that life, that new life that we want, is to live the life that we want. And so just allowing this sun opposite Pluto to kind of shift your focus and bring you back home to yourself, and coming into a healthier place. So that's the week ahead. Oh, I guess technically we do talk about Monday, and it's Mercury square Chiron. What a nice little first aspect once Chiron stations retrograde, is like, how are you talking to yourself? Is how I would say that. Like, it's a square, so it's challenging. It's Chiron. It's, all the things that Nadia said at the beginning of this call. And so I would look at that on Monday, Sunday night and Monday, as a really nice look at how are you talking to yourself, and see the story that just goes through the whole week. And so I think if I were to share my view of the theme of this, is to soften up on yourself. We're coming to the last week of Cancer season, and I think Cancer season wants us to be tender. And as we are on the final degree on Tuesday and Wednesday, which is technically next week's astrology, it is the ultimate, like, can you nurture yourself and be so kind to yourself and be that tender safe haven for vulnerability and emoting to be able to happen. So I think if we really had honest conversations with a lot of people right now, we would see that we could all use a little tenderness, you know? That's what I've been thinking a lot lately, is I just want everybody to be a lot more tender. And the people that are being hard on me, or the way that I've been hard on people, the remedy for it is constantly tenderness. And so yes, things can be hard, but can we be tender? So Nadia, do you want to add anything else to that before we move into the charts? No? All right. So those of you that are catching us on YouTube, we always do these. It's called the Sacred Space on the Attune to the Moon website, and you can join us after we turn the YouTube off. We actually dive into charts of people who are in attendance, and they get to submit their chart along with a question, and we do these little mini readings. And sometimes it's really, really fun. So please do join us sometime. And if not, we'll see you next week. Thank you.